Hello and welcome to Insight. I'm Elizabeth Omori. Today I will be flying solo because duty calls for my co-presenter Namdi Odipo. Two critical issues are before us on this edition. We will begin with an issue of global interest: safe motherhood. This is to certify that women experience safe and healthy pregnancies, childbirths, and the postpartum period, and by extension promote health and well-being of newborns. This covers a series of health services from family planning to antenatal care, safe delivery, and postnatal care, all to reduce maternal mortality. A report on maternal mortality by the World Health Organization indicates that the global maternal mortality rate in 2023 was 197 per 100,000 live births. Achieving a global maternal mortality rate below 70 by the year 2030 will require an annual rate of reduction of almost 15%. Reducing the prevalence of deaths occurring from pregnancy to delivery is a concern on the program this week. Easter is one of the holidays or feast of Christianity. It marks the resurrection of Jesus 3 days after his death by crucifixion. For many Christians, Easter is the joyful end to the Lenten season of fasting and penitence. Now, it's the Holy Week. What lessons have been learned, and how do we leverage lessons of the season to drive spiritual upliftment and promote national values for peace and unity? We will also be looking at the importance of spiritual rejuvenation. Once again, welcome to Insights.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Safe motherhood refers to the care and support provided to women during pregnancy, childbirth, and the postpartum period to ensure their health and well-being, as well as that of their babies. A focus on this segment is on care for pregnant women and their newborns. And Dr. Durumola Kende, an obstetrician and gynecologist with the National Hospital Abuja, will speak to us. Dr. Durumola, thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
Thank you so much for having me for this segment.
Thank you very much. Now, at what point is a pregnancy considered life-threatening?
Thank you so much. The issue of safe motherhood is a big issue, not only for our dear country. The entire world is actually taking it as a serious issue, and it actually assesses a critical review of health of the people. And pregnancy is not a disease. It should be a joyful period and experience that every woman should have and every family should have. However, pregnancy can become life-threatening at any stage. And pregnancy has been classified into 3 distinct segments. We have the first trimester, which is the first 3 months, the second trimester, the second 3 months, and the last 3 months, which is the third trimester. And at any point of these stages, even following delivery, it could also become life-threatening. So there's no stage at which this seemingly physiological process, normal process, cannot become life-threatening. Just to be able to identify them early and institute appropriate intervention. That is the most important thing, because none of the stages is immune against becoming life-threatening condition.
Okay. Now, talking about threats in pregnancy, what could be responsible?
There are a lot of conditions that could be harmful to pregnancy. Okay. Threats could occur either from the baby or from the mother or from environmental issues. Okay. The threats can be in form of medical condition, could be as a result of negligence, and this threat could be in form of pregnancy not be in the right location.
Okay.
That is why it is encouraged, advisable that as soon as a woman misses a period, it should seek medical opinion. Pregnancy tests can easily be done these days. Even within the home, pregnancy tests can be done. And if this is done and it's confirmed that there's pregnancy, and once this is done, it's expected that a pregnant woman, such a pregnant woman, should seek medical opinion. And more importantly, what we call obstetric scan should be done to locate where the pregnancy is at that particular point in time. Because any pregnancy outside the womb is actually a life-threatening condition that can take both the life of the baby. Of course, babies will not survive it, can also take the life of the mother. So the position of the pregnancy, as early as possible, being identified, could salvage or should save such individual from the threat that will occur as a result of pregnancy not being in the right location. Also, another threat that will occur in the course of the pregnancy is for what we call placenta not to be in the right. This definitely the placenta is in the womb, but it is possible that can be in some different part of the womb, particularly in the lower part, which can result in recurrent bleeding for such a woman. And with this, it is an issue that can cause life-threatening events. Beyond just bleeding, it can even lead to death of such a woman if appropriate intervention is not instituted. And a lot of medical conditions also in pregnancy. Pregnancy has been known to be associated with conditions like hypertension, like diabetes, and when these conditions come up, and if it is not well identified on time and appropriate intervention is instituted, it can lead to a catastrophe for the family. So all these are conditions that can become threat to the pregnancy, to the individual. In labor as similarly as supposed to be a natural process, it can also become life-threatening. It can become a threat such a way that when labors get to prolong, when the individual did not seek appropriate medical care in the course of labor, when there's no skilled birth attendant to manage such labor, it can also result into what we call prolonged labor. And prolonged labor can result into maternal exhaustion and can lead to death. So these are the issues that must be of concern. And even at the point of delivery, baby can be delivered and placenta retained inside. And retaining your placenta can also be another life-threatening condition. The woman will start bleeding, and with what we call postpartum bleeding, it can lead to death. And in fact, it's the commonest cause of maternal death worldwide. And in our environment, it has been a very big significant contribution to maternal death. So life-threatening threats in pregnancy can occur at any point in time, and these factors must be identified early so that appropriate intervention can be instituted and be able to get a better outcome from such experience.
Okay, now let me draw your attention to the issue of miscarriage. Some women face this issue, some taking twice a year in 5 years, let's say 3 times, but they keep having miscarriages. What could be responsible?
Yes, miscarriage as a condition that, of course, negative one in pregnancy, is something that could occur as a result of several factors. It could be as a result of factor from even the conception of the baby. It could be as a result of the formation of the baby. It could be as a result of the location of the baby, because of infection in the mother. It could be as a result of some conditions, we call them immunological conditions, that are in the mother. So there are a lot of factors that could be responsible. Even the womb itself can be for miscarriage. So we know that miscarriage is actually a very painful period experience for every woman, and a lot of conditions can actually be salvaged to make sure that a pregnant outcome will be a successful one. And some of these conditions are things that treating the infection in this environment, which is a very important cause, and then ensuring that pregnant women or women who tend to get pregnant start taking their prenatal medication, particularly folic acid, very early. That can be responsible for appropriate formation and of the baby. So these issues and a lot of things, the diet, consumption of alcohol, smoking tobacco, all this can as well contribute to miscarriage. Just to identify the appropriate one or the one that is in such an individual and prevent them accordingly.
Now, that is clear. So, for anyone that is married, that wants to have a child, what is expected of prospective parents?
Despite the fact that we have insufficient number of medical practitioners available, there are a lot of facilities that can still salvage conditions like this. So it's expected that parents, expectant mother, parents should prepare adequately for pregnancy. Pregnancy that can last for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, it's no more a visitor, no more a stranger to the family. It's expected that appropriate preparation should be made towards that. And it is said that the major cause of challenges with maternal mortality in this environment is the issue of addressing the 3 delays. The first delay is about decision making. The couple should be able to have it agreed as to who will take the decision. If there's need for any intervention, if there's any complication that arising, there should be who is taking that decision for that. That should be properly agreed on. And also, the next delay is the issue of how do we transport this person to the appropriate place. They must be able to identify where they want to go. It's not on the day there's a challenge or a complication that the woman or the husband start looking for where they want to go. They must have identified a place where they are registered, and they should be able to offer the appropriate basic emergency obstetric care for such mother. And if such cannot be done in that facility, the facility will know the appropriate place to refer them to, which leads to the 3rd delay. The 3rd delay we should occur at the level of the facility. If at any point in time they are having challenges, they must have prepared for where to move the patient to accordingly. So there's no excuse at this age why anybody who prepare for pregnancy has taken place and have spanned several weeks and months and not ready for expecting complications. So it is said that every woman should be have a birth preparedness and complication readiness. So there must be preparation for, in case there's any complication, there must be preparation towards salvaging such situation. And also, there's also expectation from the government and from the society, whereby care of pregnant women should also be subsidized as much as possible, so that those who cannot afford this will be able to, with their little resources, be able to afford care at minimal costs that they can afford.
Okay, I will still talk about government's response to pregnancy complications, but let me bring it down to our villages. Some persons would say, due to certain factors, they don't go for antenatal in their families. Some would say, no, they prefer to be handled by the local midwife in the village there. But with such decisions, how do we reduce the prevalence of maternal mortality? Because really, like you said, Nigeria is trying to reduce the number of deaths occurring from pregnancies.
A lot of intervention actually is being instituted so as to reduce maternal mortality. Know fully well that Nigeria as a country, just about 2% of the world population, we are having 10% of burden of maternal mortality across the world. So, which is not acceptable. And we are very much aware of effort being put in place, including the recent pronouncement by the government that cesarean section should be made free across designated hospitals across the country. These are the things that are being put in place. However, we know that people should be the first to take decision. If an individual did not go to the hospital, how will they benefit from free maternal care? How will they benefit from free cesarean section if there's need for it? So the belief that probably religion houses, the use of what we call traditional birth attendant, gone are those days. And we know very well that this still constitutes majority of delivery in our country. And at this age, we should be moving towards a level whereby everybody must have been well educated enough to know the role of specialist care, role of those who have knowledge about complications and threats in pregnancy, knowing what we call skilled birth attendants. Skilled birth attendants are those who are able to manage, identify complications, and refer accordingly. So such individuals should be the list that any pregnant woman should approach for their pregnancy, labor, and their delivery, such that they can still identify this to approach and refer them appropriately. The use of some religion houses, some traditional method or way of delivery at this stage is no more encouraged, because this has contributed significantly to the number of maternal mortality that we've recorded across our country. And it is high time that we start educating our women and let them seek care appropriately.
Okay, let's talk about hygiene for women who went under the knife to have their babies, C-sections. What should be the hygiene practices?
Yes, hygiene is one of the do's that must be well taken care of in the course of pregnancy. Knowing fully well that a lot of things could go wrong, particularly when it comes to infection. Infection could lead to conditions that can, even as easy as being called food poisoning. If there's no good hygiene in form of food that we eat, and all this can contribute to what we call preterm labor, and preterm labor can contribute to preterm delivery. And we know fully well that this is a very important cause of death of the babies when they are delivered preterm. And it is essential that we ensure good hygiene is maintained whenever there's pregnancy. And this is one of the reasons why our women are encouraged to have what we call tetanus tozoid injection. That is the jab. They need to get 2 jabs in every pregnancy, especially for those who have not completed the 5 doses that can save them for life. So for those who have not done this, taking tetanus tozoid will also be of help, especially when baby is delivered in unhygienic environment. It will help to prevent tetanus infection in these babies. But by and large, it's advisable that every pregnant woman should see hygiene as a cardinal thing that must be well maintained. And it's one important thing, do's, that must be instituted whenever there's pregnancy, so that we can have a positive outcome for the pregnancy and also for the mother.
And also for the mother. Now, how do people make informed decisions about their reproductive choices?
The information that people need in making choice about their reproductive life has to do with getting to know that issue of reproduction is a very important fact and very important issue, particularly in our environment. Fertility is a very important issue in our environment. That with this, it is advisable that every woman should plan their life, and also even men as well, so that they'll be able to have a proper decision when it comes to making reproductive decisions. For those who are married, who want to go into family line, it's advisable that a woman should have what we call preconception care. Preconception care is a care offered to a woman who is anticipating and expecting to get pregnant. And one of the cardinal things is the use of what we call folic acid as early as 6 months before the expected pregnancy. This can be instituted, and it's advisable that a lot of risks that are being taken as much as possible when it comes to reproductive decision should be avoided.
Now let's talk postpartum.
Yes, postpartum period is a very important period when it comes to maternal health, and particularly with the issue of motherhood. It's a very cardinal point that can still result in some life-threatening events. So it is a period that appropriate care, monitoring, and intervention must be put in place. And this will include psychological support. It includes in terms of finances. One of the common conditions that can occur following delivery is what we call postpartum blues, postpartum depression. And this is a very important condition that can actually affect not only the mother, even the baby. Some mother can even have some behavior that can make them to start having some harmful behavior towards the child if proper care is not being taken. So a woman that was just giving birth needs a lot of support in terms of what they want to eat, in terms of the psychological support towards reducing maternal mortality and even infant mortality.
Okay, I'm going to be asking you this because when it comes to pregnancy, child delivery, you are very much involved. Now, talking about pregnancy complications, what is the response level like in ensuring that we don't have babies dying and their mothers dying at the hospitals?
Thank you very much for this important question. We all know that National Hospital is in the eye of the country, and it's a center that has been designated as one of the centers that provides what we call emergency obstetric care, and also designated as one of the centers that offer emergency intervention, free intervention within the few hours of patient admission, particularly those, the indigent who are in need of this. And that is why it's also one of the centers that have been designated for women that want to benefit from free cesarean section or emergency cesarean section. So first thing is that, first of our concern is center has been in the forefront of making effort, making input, devising so many methods and appropriate interventions to ensure that maternal mortality is drastically reduced, despite the fact that majority of the delivery takes place outside this big center.
You know, nations are raising to ensure that they meet all the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. And then our focus is Goal 3, which centers on health and well-being. Now, mothers and babies, do you see us meeting this target before 2030?
Yeah.
Reducing the prevalence of maternal mortality before 2030?
Knowing fully well that the Sustainable Development Goal 3, which is target towards maternal health and more importantly towards maternal mortality. And a lot of significant effort have been put in place. Knowing fully well that 2030 is just few years away. Even the fact that we may not be able to achieve this reduction in maternal mortality towards the target of achieving 70 per 100,000, which is the target. But efforts are being made in place to reduce the current rate in Nigeria as much as possible. And the National Demographic Health Survey of 2024 has shown a little improvement compared to 2018 report. So we are on the track, and hopefully, if we can sustain this and improve on the current effort, we should be able to move beyond where we are. Even at all, we'll not be able to meet up with the target of the Sustainable Development Goal in 2030. And more importantly, is for every pregnant woman to identify the role of prenatal care, the role of medical doctors, nurses, and all other healthcare providers in management of the pregnancy. So I want to encourage that every pregnant woman should have what we call antenatal care. And this starts with approaching the healthcare providers and establish a relationship so whereby the test will be done. If there's anything identified, appropriate care will be done. So prenatal care, antenatal care is the number one cardinal point that if at all you cannot remember anything, this should be remembered. Also, medication that are not prescribed by the appropriate or designated healthcare providers should not be taken in the course of pregnancy. And also, I also want one of the duties to also ensure that a pregnant woman get hydrated. Take a lot of fluid as much as possible, because dehydration will also complicate and become a threat to pregnancy. Another important thing is our hygiene. We should ensure appropriate health care hygiene, ensure neatness. This is very important. Alcohol and smoking should be avoided completely as much as possible in the course of pregnancy, because they can contribute to negative pregnancy outcome. Beyond this, how do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of our teeth? In fact, it has been found that inappropriate dental care, not taking care of our teeth, our mouth very well, will result in some medical conditions that can end up with complicating pregnancy. All these are the things that we must make sure we observe. And what are the don'ts? It is one of the don'ts is to ensure that no pregnant woman should approach unqualified centers, unregistered centers, to have either their pregnancy care, labor, and delivery in such centers. Everything should be done where we have been registered for appropriate care for pregnant women. Beyond this, also, one of the things that should not be done is to make sure that no pregnant woman involved in exercise that has not been approved by healthcare provider. We encourage that every pregnant woman should be active, but there are some exercises that have been dedicated, assigned, or approved for different stages of the pregnancy. So we should approach our healthcare provider to guide us in the appropriate exercise that are due for each stage of the pregnancy. Also, one of the things that we must also not do in the course of it is to ensure that we avoid what we call unpasteurized food and milk. can cause a lot of infection. Also, raw food should be avoided as much as possible. We shouldn't eat contaminated food, even though the fact that no matter the economy it is, we should ensure that our health is taken very seriously. And it is also encouraged that for a pregnant woman, at the point of giving birth, we should make sure we don't approach where it's not recognized or registered as a place of delivery. We should go to the right place, seek care and seek care for delivery at the appropriate places. And lastly, I also want to say that couples should get prepared. What they should do, get prepared and get ready, prepare for pregnancy, for labor and delivery as if it can happen anytime. Such a way that we must always be birth prepared and complication ready.
Okay, I'm forced to ask you, finally, what about the use of anti-malaria drugs and analgesics for pregnant women? We need to be clear on that.
One of the important recommendations beyond the tetanus toxoid I've made mention about injection is use of malaria prevention prophylaxis. Every month, once in a month, it is recommended that every pregnant woman from 13 weeks, actually from the second trimester, from the second part of the pregnancy, must start taking anti-malaria once in a month. It's a 3 tablets of medication that will be given to every pregnant woman in all designated healthcare facilities where antenatal care are being offered. And this is very important, not only for the mother, also to prevent malaria for the baby, which is also one of the causes of sickness or disease in the baby that has just been delivered. So malaria prevention is a very important recommendation, just as we have the prenatal medications, the iron and the folic acid as part of what should be taken regularly to ensure safe motherhood.
Obstetrician and gynecologist Dr. Durumola Kehinde, I want to thank you so much for enlightening us. Very compact and comprehensive. Thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate your presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Whatever the issues are,
The National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Easter begins with the commemoration of Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, marks the betrayal of Jesus on Spike Wednesday, climaxing with the commemoration of the Last Supper on Thursday and the Passion of Jesus on Good Friday. It's the Holy Week. It's time to reflect on the teachings and virtues Christ Jesus taught this season. On this segment, Dr. Femi Lanre-Oke, lead pastor, Jesus Praise Evangelical Ministries, will speak to us on the significance of the season. Pastor Oke, thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
You are most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's the Holy Week. Many Christians are observing the fast. Is this just an obligation this time?
Well, yes, Jesus has spoken about fasting. It is good that people follow this trend of 40 days fasting and prayer. Some people just do it as a religious routine, but it is not restricted to that. You can fast at any other time, apart from the time of this Easter where people are considering as a period where you should do the 40 days fasting like Jesus did. Any other time you can choose to fast, and some people may choose to say this is an annual ritual for them. Once they do this 40 days fasting, then they wait another day, but it is not advisable. We are not to just walk in that routine alone. We should be led by the Spirit of the Lord. We can wait on Him. We can choose to fast at any period, any given time, as instructed by the Lord, or if there's a need for such.
Or when there's a need for such. So
Yes.
what is expected of us after the spiritual exercise?
So many things, because when we are fasting, we want to subdue our body so that our spirit can be more active and connected to God in a place of prayer. It is not also sufficient to just fast without praying. If you are fasting, like they are doing this 40 days fasting and prayer, it's also expected that you pray. So in this kind of exercise, we expect godliness, love, and sacrificial living in the example of our Lord Jesus Christ that we're emulating. That should be the standard.
That should be the standard.
Yes.
Well, the death of Christ is symbolic. Explain to us what makes his death different.
Yes. Okay, the death of Jesus is the center of Christianity, actually, because it's the death and the resurrection of Jesus symbolizes so many things. Number one, when we talk about the death of Jesus and the resurrection, we focus on forgiveness of sin. So when we look at forgiveness of sin, it's because Jesus was sinless. He died for the sin of others. So when we are looking at this period and looking at what Jesus did as a model, then we should emulate it, not just as an individual, but even as a nation. We should now come to understand, okay, if Jesus, who was sinless, who had no sin, would die for the sins of others, we should learn to forgive one another. Okay. So even either inter-party, intra-party, or as a nation, ethnic, religious, or this particular ethnic is fighting against this ethnic, this religion, whatsoever, we should emulate the example of the Lord Jesus Christ, who died for our sins, who knew no sin, but became sin for those who will believe in him. So I think nationally, we should now look at learning to forgive one another and saying, okay, if Jesus will die and forgive for the sins of others, the sins he did not commit, if my brother, my sister offends me, I can forgive. So all inter-party, intra-party, ethnic crises should be resolved, all conflicts, whichever way, should be resolved this moment. Because we are now looking at Jesus, the example, and what he did and what we should emulate.
Okay. You talked about forgiveness. Well, the Bible highlighted virtues in Galatians for us to embrace. How do we leverage them for peace and unity to reign in our homes and in our nation? Could you highlight some of these fruits of the Spirit to us?
Yeah, like the fruit of the Spirit, when we talk about love, the joy, you know, the fruit of the Spirit is... in Galatians chapter 5, it comes like the works, before Galatians 5, 22, 19 speaks about the works of the flesh are made manifest. But in speaking about the fruit of the Spirit, he said the fruit of the Spirit is, and he mentioned 9 different things. And when he was speaking about the fruit of the Spirit, and he's saying is, grammatically, you may look at, oh, it should be one thing. But because in Christ, these 9 things is exemplified. So when you know Christ, even though it is one Christ, there are 9 manifestations. That's why you have ease, and you have 9 other things. So when you come to the knowledge of Christ and you receive him by the cause of this death and resurrection, this fruit of the Spirit, like we're talking about forgiveness, it is in love. If you look at the death of Jesus and his resurrection too, apart from saying forgiveness, we look at sacrificial living, sacrificial leadership. He was not dying for his own sin, taking punishment for himself. He was dying for those who have offended God, who have done something contrary. So it became an example of sacrificial living that we can see also in love, which is one of the fruit of the Spirit. So you see, if leaders today now begin to take decisions, they take policies, not because it suits their needs, not because it satisfies their wants, but because they are other-centered, masses-centered, either leaders at the local government, at the state level, at the federal level, or in different capacity, even as the husband, as a teacher, as a principal of a school, as a bank manager, as a police officer. If you begin to live in the example of Christ, living the sacrificial leadership, now living for others, not for yourself, someone who is going to die and not dying for, if he had died for a sin, it would have been sufficient. But if he's going to die and take punishment for the sins of others, this is an example of sacrificial living. So it is also in this season that we should be reminded that as we come to celebrate the death and the resurrection of Jesus, we should be reminded of sacrificial leadership.
Okay. You know, if we consider the times we are in, so many vices, so many things that negates what the Bible actually preaches. Yeah. But what role should the church play in ensuring that these virtues you have mentioned are propagated for nation building? You know,
one of the things the death and the resurrection of Jesus did was to bring unity in diversity. You know, when he died, all Christians gathered, irrespective of ethnics, irrespective of beliefs, or so the death of Jesus brought unity. And I think one of the things the church is lacking is accurate knowledge.
Okay.
I think like that, because we need to see, the church needs to come to the understanding that the word church, that when Jesus was speaking, I will build my church, he was speaking about ecclesia, which means governments. The church on its own is a government on its own. And we must see it not just as a religious setting. Jesus said, I will build, when Jesus was asking, who do people say I am? And people say, you are this, you are this, you are that. And say, okay, who do you think I am? And he said, you are the Christ. And he said, Peter, son of Jonah, flesh and blood has not revealed, but the Father in heaven. This revelation did not come just by your opinion. It is given to you by God. He said, upon this revelation, I will build my ecclesia, my governments. So, and the church needs to come beyond this religious thing and begin to take responsibility that the government of Christ means love. The government of Christ means peace. And we must now put this value system in the heart of men. Not just putting people together and doing religious rituals, making them come on a day of the week and come maybe twice a day and just do some religious things and go. We must understand that as governments of Christ, we are to bring a positive impact and bring a positive transformation, putting the right value system in the heart of the followers. And so by the time we impart them with the principles of Christ, because it is one thing to bring them to the knowledge of the person of Christ, which is salvation, but if we don't bring them to the principles of Christ, we will not become the agents of change that the government of Christ portray. So if we're going to be the agent of change, transformational leader, we must emphasize on the principles of Christ, not just on the person of Christ alone. So I think the church has a whole lot to do to come back to the true knowledge of the Bible and come out of this religious circle and begin to bring the kingdom mindset in the life of the followers. It boils down to understanding people are, today, even today in the general setting, you see this one says I'm an Hausa, this one says I'm a Yoruba, this one says I'm an Igbo, this one says I'm NNP, this one says I'm PDP, this one says I'm APC. But there is a greater party that we all belong to. It's a party called Nigeria.
Okay.
And until we begin to have that understanding and see things that way, that this guy may be in APC, this other person may be in SDP, this person may be in NRC, it does not matter, but we have one party together, that's Nigeria. You may be a Fulani man, I may be a Yoruba man, you may be an Igbo person, but we are one Nigeria. Until that understanding sinks, and it is not just the church now, even the schools must play the role. And national orientation, we must just bring this understanding to everyone, and it must sink in everything we do to see this is, in fact, the one party that we belong to is the party of humanity. This is a human being. That's sufficient. Either even is a Nigerian, is an African, is an European, is an American. If this is human, if that understanding does not sink, it will be difficult for us to relate the kingdom message that God has sent us to bring in this period of death and resurrection of Jesus.
Okay, what about the family? Because I want to believe that whatever we see in society,
yes,
whatever we feel in society,
yeah,
is as a result of what is done at home or thought at home that has been churned out.
Accurately, I think the starting point is the family. That's why marriage was God's mindset, because God understood that everything that we become starts from the home.
Okay.
So that's why, when God started, he didn't start by building a school system where Adam will attend and say, well, education is very important, so let's put an education system. This is your primary school, secondary school, and this is your tertiary institution. He started with the home. Because God knew if education will work, it has to do with the home. If politics will work, it has to do with the home. If everything will work in our society, it has to do with the home. But the truth is that we've deviated from the principles that governs the home. See, everything strive and live on principles. If you see an auto mechanic today who is fixing a car, that guy is only working on principles that regulate the automobile. He can't do contrary to the principle that regulates automobile. If he does that, he will damage the car completely. If you see a pilot who flies a plane, he must work on the principles that fly an aeroplane. If he works contrary to the principle, he will bring down the aeroplane. The same thing, we must look at the principles that govern everything we lay hands on. If we look at governance, if we don't work on the principles for effective governance, we can come with our human ideology and pull the whole thing down. The same thing with the family setting. We must understand the ideology of who a man is, the ideology of who a woman is. You know, most of the time I talk to people when somebody is a father, he has given birth to a boy or a girl, and he say, oh, come for a naming ceremony. I'm curious. I want to ask the guy, has anybody taught you fatherhood? Did anybody teach you how to be a father? I ask some men, I say, who taught you how to be a husband? Or do you think just going to age of 30, age of 35, and you have money, you have a good job, then the next thing is to get a wife, and you get a wife, you start raising a family without being taught how to be a husband? Nobody taught you how to be a father. Nobody taught you parenting, and you just assume you know it. Nobody can wake up today and say because he has been to the hospital sometimes and for a few times he wants to be a doctor and just say, well, I've been to the hospital, I've been treated by nurses, then I can be. You need to be taught how to be a husband. If you are not taught to be a husband, you will run your home wrongly. There are principles that sustain the home. So the church has a role to play. The school has to, education sector has a role to play. We need to now teach people from the grassroots, from the elementary. This is what it means to be a husband. This is what it means to be a father. This is what it means to parents. In that way, we can be able to build a society that will live in unity, that will foster on peace and love. Because today we have more women taking the responsibilities of men. You see them going here, doing a whole lot to just make ends meet. You see those men now becoming so weak and so careless, so negligent, so irresponsible. You see a man who does not even have a focus, a vision for his life. He's had children that he does not even know their whereabouts. And you see the mother looking at how to get feeding, how to get clothing, how to get rent, how to get tuition fee, because a whole lot of the male gender has failed in their responsibility. And it is not because, I think it is not because they just desire to fail, it's because nobody has brought them and mentored them and tutored them what the male life is all about and what the responsibility of the male thing is all about. So they just grew to know that they are male figure, male personality, and they don't even know themselves. You know, it's amazing to see how men go to school to learn about plants, to learn about trees, and say they are doing anatomy, they're doing zoology, and learn about insects, and learn about everything, but don't know anything about themselves. They don't even know what their strength is. They don't know what their weakness is. They don't know what their passion is. They can't even trace. They can't manage their emotions. They know so little about themselves, particularly the male figure, and they don't even know how to harness their potential and be the best version of themselves because they have nothing. They've learned everything about every other thing about themselves. So they've taught them how to lead others, but they can't lead themselves. So there is a major gap in their life. So we've seen the collapse in the family system because the male figure has failed to embrace the responsibility due to him.
But do you agree that most families fail to groom their boys that grow to become adults?
Yes, most families fail to groom their boys because they don't even know what parenting is all about. Yeah, for them, if we can make provision for your feeding and we can pay your tuition fee, that's fine. You want to buy clothes in Christmas, you want to buy clothes in Salah, you want to buy clothes during the holidays, you want to go vacation. They feel that's all. And this is a great erosion of destiny. We've seen this, you know, and I won't blame families because they don't even know how best to do it differently. Yeah, because we need to know that, you know, we have generations by generation. We have the Gen Z. After the Gen Z, I think there's another generation that is present now. We have before the different kind of generations. And each generation comes with their own pattern. And we need to now come to the understanding of how to mentor and groom these generations in their caliber and their categories and know, okay, this is the peculiarity for each of these generations. I can't train my child the way my parents trained me because I'm of a different generation from my own child. But then I can't leave the training of my child to the school. Because the guy who is in school is also doing this work in school because of salary. He's not doing it to do a mentoring work. He's not in school so that he can mentor my child. He's doing the service because probably he wanted to work in NNPC. Now, I must now take the responsibility as a father to play a role in mentoring my child, in tutoring them, in guiding them, and shaping them for the life ahead, and letting them understand, these are my past, these are my mistakes. Don't fall in this mistake. That was what strengthened Solomon in his journey. David was speaking to Solomon in the Bible. He said, look, when I was there, this man was a problem to me. When you get there, make sure you deal with this man so that he won't be a problem to you. He said, when I was insulted by Absalom, your brother, this guy was insulting me and he did so much, but he pleaded with me to forgive him. I forgave him. If parents will tell their children, if mother will tell their daughter, he said, the reason why I'm not with your father is because every time your father speaks one word, I return with 10. So when you are growing up, if you see that you are having the tendency to speak back to your spouse, kill that thing. If fathers will tell their child, he said, the reason why I'm a tenant at 80 is because every time money comes to me, I feel like spending. So we need parents who know what parenting is all about and how to tutor these parents and guide them and mold them for the future that is and the challenges that is ahead of them.
Yeah. Now back to our focus, which is Easter. Beyond the celebration, what should be the guiding principles for Christians and non-Christians? Because Ramadan ended a few weeks ago, and it looks like God is trying to teach us something.
Yeah, there are certain principles we should embrace by the death, because the death of Jesus, number one, shows us forgiveness. We must learn to forgive one another. Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they are doing. We should look beyond what others have done. We should learn the principles of forgiveness this season. We should also have sacrificial leadership because Jesus was doing it for the sake of others, not for his own need. So we should bring policies and come up with rules that meet with others, take decisions that affect others positively. We must now embrace unity in diversity, come together and say we are human beings. And we must not kill one another and say we are doing one havoc or doing one thing or the other. Then we must also show love to each other and must also show integrity, because the death of Jesus is the defeat of the works of darkness, which is corruption, which is deceit. So we must now live in integrity and truth, honesty in this period. Accountable. We must be accountable for our deed, accountable for ourselves, to ourselves. We don't need to. Somebody told me, he said, if your boss waits to ask you for a report of accountability before you give it, then there's something wrong with you. We must show accountability in this season. We must show unity and come together. We must show love, and we must also preach hope, because the resurrection of Jesus also is a message of hope. So this season, we have a lot to learn, a lot of principles to hold to ourselves. Forgiveness, sacrificial living, love, unity, and all manners, and just honesty and integrity.
What will be your words to the government in terms of policies and decisions?
I personally will suggest that government should create forum where they interact. For me, I would have advised either Mr. President to have zonal meetings, this is your political zones, and bring people maybe in the southwest. It can come to Ibadan and bring people from different states at the grassroots and listen to their plights. Then go to the southeast, go to the south, the north central, and have that kind of geopolitical zone meeting. So if policies we work to meet the need, they must be understood what the needs are actually. It is when those understanding come, then we can now come up with policies that are generally can affect and benefit everyone.
Okay, now the government is always held accountable, but as followers, we have a role to play as well. What is expected of us? Because we have so much to do.
So a whole lot to do. There was a time I sent a message to the Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Corps. I said airport road now is becoming dangerous because people now drive one way consistently. Now that's not the president. Those guys who are driving one way are facing in the airport. Anybody coming from where international, we come through that road, and if somebody is coming from America, from anywhere, and is now looking, you wonder, is this Nigeria? If you drive through the airport road and coming to town now, you see different waste bin by the roadside. Different. This is embarrassing. This is not Mr. President at this point. A normal human being should not just do that. I just imagine nobody will come in the sitting room and be pouring dirt there. But why will people just take those kind of people who drive one way in the airport road on the major road? If they go to London tomorrow without anybody advising them,
they behave well.
Then you wonder that means they have a knowledge of sanity. They just choose not to work in it. So we keep wondering, what's all this about? So there are things that's why I said the gap is you leading yourself first. If I want to be a leader to others, I should learn to lead myself. I should know, is this the right thing? I don't need to be told. I don't need to be told that driving against traffic is wrong. I don't need to be told that putting dirt by the roadside is wrong. It's just me taking initiative and leading myself. I think the followers also need to take responsibility. I tell people everybody is a leader, everybody is a follower. So in my own little leadership capacity, I must demonstrate efficiency. I must know, okay, this is the little I can contribute. If everybody will sweep in front of their house, the whole community will be clean. So let everyone take that leadership responsibility. I'm going to play my part. This is my own role. I will contribute my quota. Then I will leave my other colleague to do their own too. And let's see how things now go from there.
Dr. Femi Oke, lead pastor, Jesus Praise Evangelical Ministries. Thank you so much for joining us on Inside this week. And thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Whatever the issues are,
The National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
be it government's policies or in fact any issue of public concern,
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
and gaining understanding is also getting insight.
And that's Inside today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Elizabeth Omori. Remember, remain patriotic always. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.